My wife said I was just a plumber. Then her mom's phone buzzed. Why is your company worth $10 million? The conference room at the Whitfield Family Law Office on 17th Street in downtown Denver had been booked under the pretense of a family strategy session. That was what my mother-in-law Diane called it when she texted me the night before. A family strategy session. Like I was a liability on a balance sheet that needed restructuring. I walked in at 6:47 p.m. on a Thursday, still wearing my work clothes, which meant a Pinnacle mechanical polo and steel-toed boots that had already been through a commercial HVAC retrofit in Centennial that morning. Diane was seated at the head of the table, reading glasses perched on her nose, a legal pad in front of her like she had been preparing testimony. Her husband Craig sat to her left with his arms crossed, wearing the look he reserved for people who disappointed him. In the 12 years I had known him, that person was usually me. Clarissa, my wife, sat across from her mother, her posture perfectly straight, in the kind of charcoal blazer she had started wearing more often over the past year. She looked at me when I walked in, then she looked away. That was when I knew this was not a conversation. This was an intervention. My name is Roy Calder. I am 44 years old. I run a heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and mechanical contracting company called Pinnacle Mechanical Group out of Denver, Colorado. We service commercial properties across the Front Range office parks, hospitals, multifamily residential buildings, and everything in between. We have 27 employees, 3 service vans, 2 crane-certified technicians, and a project pipeline that usually runs about 11 months out at any given time. What nobody in that conference room knew, what I had deliberately not told Clarissa, not told her parents, and not told anyone outside of my business attorney and 2 silent investors, was that Pinnacle was not just an HVAC company anymore. 4 years earlier, I had started building something on the side. Not a hobby, not a weekend project. A software platform I called ClearPath, designed specifically for building automation and commercial real estate. It integrated HVAC performance data, energy usage, occupancy patterns, and predictive maintenance scheduling into one dashboard that property managers could actually use. I built it because I was frustrated. Every building we service seemed to be running on outdated systems with no real visibility, no meaningful analytics, and no way to prevent the failures we kept getting called to fix at 2 in the morning. I built ClearPath because I needed it to exist. At first, I had no idea what it would become. By the time I walked into that conference room in my steel-toed boots, ClearPath had already been quietly adopted by 43 commercial real estate operators across 9 states. 2 of them were REITs. One was a hospital network. We had a pilot program running in a portfolio of Class A office buildings in Atlanta, and another pilot was just beginning in Phoenix. My development team, 4 engineers I had hired remotely over the previous 2 years, had built something the industry was only beginning to discuss in the right rooms. The Wall Street Journal was one of those rooms. But I am getting ahead of myself. Before I tell you what happened in that conference room, I need you to understand how we got there. If this kind of story resonates with you, if you have ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to be in your corner, then pay attention to what happened next, because this story changed everything about how I see loyalty, ambition, and who you decide to become when no one is watching. Clarissa and I met at a fundraiser for the Colorado Children's Hospital 11 years earlier. She was a third-year associate at Whitfield & Boone, the same firm her father Craig had co-founded in 1998. I was still in work boots then too, and she did not seem to mind. Clarissa had a laugh that made strangers turn around just to find the source of it. She listened in a way most people do not anymore, fully and completely, without planning her next sentence while you were still talking. We got married 2 years later in a ceremony at the Stanley Hotel up in Estes Park. Her parents smiled in every photo. Craig shook my hand at the reception and told me he respected a man who built things with his hands. Diane hugged me at the door at the end of the night and said, "You are going to take good care of our girl." I told her I would. For a long time, I think I did. The first 5 years were good. We bought a house in the Stapleton neighborhood, which they have since rebranded as Central Park, a name nobody over 40 actually uses. Clarissa was billing 60 hours a week at the firm. I was building Pinnacle from nothing, 3 employees, 1 leased van, and a reputation I had to earn, 1 service call at a time. We were not wealthy, but we were solid. We were building something. The shift happened gradually, the way most shifts do, which is why they are so hard to see in real time. Clarissa made senior associate at 34. Then she started being considered for partnership. The money changed, the hours changed, the dinner conversations changed. She started using words like trajectory and positioning when she talked about her career, and those same words started showing up when she talked about us, as if our marriage had become a professional alliance that needed managing. Her parents started visiting more. Craig and Diane would come over for dinner, and Craig would ask me questions about Pinnacle that were dressed up as interest but felt like depositions. How many employees now? And you're still just doing maintenance contracts. No commercial development. No expansion plans. Diane would talk about Clarissa's cases, her wins, her client relationships, and the partners who were championing her as if I should have been taking notes. I started declining those dinners whenever I could. The truth was, I was spending those evenings building ClearPath. Every hour I was not running Pinnacle, I was on calls with my lead engineer, Tyler Abrams, who worked out of his apartment in Austin and understood almost instinctively what I was trying to create. I was reading white papers on building management systems. I was calling property managers in markets we did not even service yet just to understand their pain points. I was writing the business model, then rewriting it, then throwing it out and starting over. Clarissa knew I had a software project running. She knew its name. She did not know its scope, its growth rate, or the conversations that were starting to happen about it in commercial real estate circles on the East Coast. I had not hidden it from her out of deception. I had kept it quiet because I had learned painfully that Clarissa had a way of sharing things with her parents before they were ready to be shared. And once Craig and Diane had an opinion about something, that opinion calcified. I did not want their opinions about ClearPath before it was real enough to withstand them. I should have told her. I know that now. But I did not. And that silence, as it turned out, had consequences of its own. Clarissa made partner on a Monday. I found out because she called me from the office at 2:30 in the afternoon, and her voice had that particular quality, bright and controlled at the same time, like a champagne bottle being opened carefully. I knew immediately that something significant had happened. "Roy," she said, "they voted me in this morning, effective immediately. I am the youngest partner in the firm's history." I told her I was proud of her. I meant it. I pulled the van over in a parking lot on Arapahoe Road and sat there for a few minutes just thinking about how hard she had worked for that. I thought about all the nights she came home at 9 and ate dinner standing at the kitchen counter because she was too tired to sit down. I thought about the weekends she had spent reading briefs at our dining room table, her coffee going cold beside her. She deserved it. What I did not expect was what came 3 days later. Craig called a family dinner, except it was not at their house in Cherry Hills Village, the way family dinners usually were. It was at the office, Conference Room C, 6:30 p.m. Craig said he wanted to celebrate Clarissa's achievement properly, and that he had a few thoughts he wanted to share. Diane sent me a follow-up text that said to come prepared to talk about some exciting opportunities. I showed up in my work clothes. I should have known from the way the chairs were arranged. Craig sat at the head of the table. Diane sat to his left. Clarissa sat across from her mother. A chair had been left open at the opposite end from Craig, visually and deliberately placed at the far end of the table from where the authority sat. That was the chair they had left for me. Roy Craig started before I had even gotten both hands on the table. We want to talk about the family's direction going forward. Clarissa's achievement puts this family in a genuinely different position. And I think it is time we had an honest conversation about making sure all the pieces are aligned. I asked him what he meant by aligned. Diane folded her hands on the legal pad in front of her. "Roy, we love you. You know that. But we have to be honest with you as family. Pinnacle has been..." She paused there, choosing the word carefully. "Stagnant." Craig nodded like the word had been agreed upon in advance. Diane continued, "Craig had someone pull your public filings. You have roughly the same revenue you had 3 years ago. You are not growing." I told her that revenue in mechanical contracting is cyclical and that our margin had actually improved significantly. Craig waved that off like I had made a procedural objection. "Roy, the reality is that Clarissa is going to be operating in a different world now. She will be representing clients at the level where partners at firms like ours travel in certain circles. There are expectations, social expectations, professional ones. He looked at me for a moment. A plumbing company, however well run, does not fit that picture. I want to be precise about what happened next because I want you to understand that what Clarissa said was not something she blurted out in anger. It was not careless. It was not a sentence that escaped before she could stop it. She looked at her parents first, briefly, and then she looked at me. And she said it slowly, with the kind of careful enunciation she used in depositions. I just made partner, Roy. I need to know that you are taking your career as seriously as I have taken mine. Because the truth is, I have been carrying us financially for over a year, and I cannot keep doing that while you run a company that is going nowhere. I have to tell you, that is the part I have replayed more times than I can count. I did not feel rage in that moment. I felt something colder, clarification maybe, like a lens adjusting. Because what I was hearing was not just frustration. It was performance. She was performing for her parents. The phrasing, the tone, the careful construction of it. I just made partner while my husband is just a plumber. That was not how Clarissa talked to me when we were alone. That was how Clarissa talked when she needed Craig and Diane to see something a certain way. I had been managed. I set my hands flat on the table and looked at the three of them. I hear you, I said, and I want to respond thoughtfully. Can I have 10 minutes? Craig looked mildly surprised that I had not gotten defensive. Of course, he said. I stepped out into the hallway and called Tyler Abrams in Austin. He picked up on the second ring. Hey, he said, did you see the message from Hartwell Media yet? I had not. I checked my email while Tyler talked. There was a message from a journalist at the Wall Street Journal's commercial real estate desk. He had been tipped about ClearPath by a contact at one of the REIT operators we were working with in Atlanta. He was writing a feature on emerging building automation platforms and wanted to include us. He had been doing his own research. His email included a preliminary valuation estimate from a market analyst he had consulted, someone who specialized in PropTech. The number on the screen was $10.4 million. I stood in that hallway outside Conference Room C, wearing my Pinnacle mechanical polo and my steel-toed boots, and I read the email twice. Then I called Tyler back and told him to tell the journalist we were available. I told him to send over the Q3 adoption metrics and the new contract with the Phoenix portfolio. I told him not to rush and to let it develop at the right pace. Then I straightened my collar, opened the conference room door, and sat back down in the chair at the far end of the table. Craig had been talking. He had put together what I can only describe as a presentation. Not a formal one, but a verbal one. The kind he must have rehearsed because it came out too smooth. He was suggesting that Clarissa's new income, combined with a more strategic use of our assets, might allow me to wind down Pinnacle in an orderly way and pursue something different. A role at a property management company, maybe. Something with a title. Something that would read better at the kinds of dinners Clarissa was now going to be attending. He said it like he was doing me a favor. Diane had her legal pad out and was actually taking notes. I listened until Craig finished. Then I asked Clarissa directly, "Is this what you want?" She looked at her parents before she answered.
I think it might be time to be realistic about Pinnacle's future, Roy.
I nodded. I let the silence sit for a moment. Then Diane's phone buzzed on the table in front of her. She glanced down at it, the way people do when they are expecting a message, quick and reflexive. Then she stopped. She looked at the screen. She looked up at me. She looked back at the screen. Her face changed. Craig leaned over to look at what she was seeing. His face changed too. Clarissa was watching her parents. "What is it?" she asked. Diane slid the phone across the table toward Clarissa without saying a word. It was a push notification from the Wall Street Journal app, which Diane used because Craig had set it up on her phone years earlier. The headline had just gone live. Apparently, the journalist had moved faster than Tyler expected. The headline read, "Quietly built in Colorado, ClearPath is rewriting how commercial buildings think." The subheading read, "The building automation startup embedded inside a Denver HVAC company is drawing attention from institutional real estate investors. Analysts estimate a current valuation of $10 million with room to grow." Clarissa read it. Then she read it again. She looked up at me. The room was completely silent. Craig reached over and took the phone from Clarissa. He read the article. I watched him scroll. I watched him get to the part about Pinnacle Mechanical. I watched him get to the part where they quoted one of the Atlanta REIT operators. I still have the article saved, so I remember the words exactly. ClearPath has done more for our operating efficiency in 8 months than any system we have used in the past decade. We are expanding the contract across our full portfolio. Craig set the phone down. He looked at me the way people look at something they have misidentified. It was that particular expression where the face has to catch up to new information. Roy, he said slowly, is this real? I told him it was. When did this happen? Diane asked. She had gone very still. I told her it had been happening quietly for 4 years while I was running Pinnacle. I told them about Tyler. I told them about the 43 operators. I told them about the REIT partnerships, the hospital network, and the Phoenix pilot. I did not rush it. I laid it out the way I had learned to lay out a project proposal, methodically, with the facts in the right order, letting each one land before I moved to the next. Clarissa had not said a word since she read the headline. She was looking at the table. When I finished, Craig leaned back in his chair and rubbed his jaw with one hand. He looked like a man recalibrating something he had been certain about. I understood the feeling. I had done my share of recalibrating over the past year too. Why did you not tell us? Diane finally asked. I looked at Clarissa when I answered. Because I needed to build it first before anyone had opinions about whether it could work. Clarissa's jaw tightened. She knew exactly what I meant. She was the first person I should have told. She was also the reason I had waited. What happened in the weeks after that conference room is a longer story, but I will tell you the parts that matter. Clarissa and I had the hardest conversation of our marriage 2 nights later at our kitchen table in Central Park, with no one else present and nowhere to perform. She told me she had felt left out. I told her she had made me feel like an embarrassment. We were both right. We were both wrong. We sat there for 3 hours, saying things we had been stockpiling for years. Somewhere in the middle of it, I asked her if she had actually meant what she said in the conference room. She did not answer right away. Then she said, I meant that I was scared, Roy. I said it wrong. I said it in front of my parents and it came out cruel. And I am sorry. I believed her. I still do. But sorry does not put the words back. It only changes what you do with them. Craig called me the following week. He said he wanted to take me to lunch, just the 2 of us, at a place on Larimer Street he liked. He was different that day. Quieter, more considered. He asked me real questions about ClearPath, not depositions. Questions. He asked about the go-to-market strategy, about competitive differentiation, about whether I had thought about institutional capital. He had clearly done his homework since the article was published. At the end of lunch, he said something I had not expected. I owe you an apology, he said. What I said in that room, calling it a plumbing company, suggesting you wind it down, that was wrong. It was dismissive. You built something real, and I did not see it because I was not looking for it. I told him I appreciated that. Then he asked if there was anything he could do. I told him there might be, actually. ClearPath's commercial real estate expansion was going to require contract work, lease amendments, data licensing agreements, and SaaS terms for institutional clients. Whitfield & Boone had exactly the kind of commercial real estate practice that could handle it. Craig smiled for the first time since the conference room. That he said, we can do. Diane is still Diane. She sent me a very thoughtful email, 2 full paragraphs, which, for Diane, is practically a memoir. She said she had underestimated me and that she was proud of what I had built. She also said she hoped Clarissa and I could find our footing, and she said it in a way that felt genuine rather than managed. Tyler Abrams, for the record, has since moved to Denver. He is running product development full-time now out of a small office we leased on Blake Street, 3 blocks from Coors Field. He wears the same 2 hoodies in rotation, drinks an alarming amount of coffee, and is the most quietly brilliant person I have ever worked with. The day the Wall Street Journal article published, he texted me 4 words. Told you it would work. He had, in fact, told me that multiple times. ClearPath closed its Series A financing 6 months after the article was published. I will not give you the specific number because that is not what this story is about. What I will tell you is that it was enough to accelerate the platform's expansion into 12 new markets and bring on 2 enterprise salespeople who actually knew how to close deals with institutional investors. Pinnacle Mechanical is still running, still servicing commercial HVAC across the Front Range, still with 27 employees, and still with 3 service vans. I do not plan to wind it down. The relationships I built through Pinnacle, the property managers, the facilities directors, the building engineers, those relationships are the reason ClearPath exists. You cannot separate the two. One made the other possible. I still show up to job sites in my polo and my steel-toed boots. Clarissa made a comment about it once after the Series A closed when we were getting ready for a dinner with one of the institutional investors. She asked if I was going to change before we left. I told her I had brought a jacket. She laughed. The real laugh, not the performing one. The one that made strangers turn around. That was the one I had missed. Here's what I want you to take away from this story, because I spent a long time thinking about the right way to say it. The people who underestimate you are often not stupid. Craig Whitfield is not a stupid man. Diane is not a stupid woman. Clarissa is one of the sharpest people I know. They looked at me and saw a man in work boots who ran a maintenance company, and they built a story around that image. Because the image was all they could see. They could not see the 4 years of late nights. They could not see the 43 operators, the engineers in Austin, the REITs in Atlanta, or the hospital network that was saving hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on energy costs because of software I had built at my kitchen table. They could not see it because I had not shown it to them, and that was partly on me. Here is the harder truth. If I had told Clarissa about ClearPath, really told her, and brought her in the way a partner deserves to be brought in, maybe she never would have sat in that conference room and said what she said. Maybe we would have faced those 4 years as a team instead of living through them in parallel. I kept a secret to protect the thing I was building, and the cost was that my wife did not fully know who she was married to. That is not pride. That is a mistake. What I know now, on the other side of all of it, is that real strength is not about proving something to the people who doubted you. The moment in that conference room, watching Craig read the journal article, watching Diane go still, was not the victory I would have expected it to be when I imagined it. It was more complicated than that. Quieter. There is no clean satisfaction in being right, when being right also carries the weight of what it cost. The work itself was always the point. The building, the solving, the getting it wrong and then getting it less wrong. The 43 property managers who could finally see their buildings clearly. The facilities director in Atlanta who called me 8 months into our contract to say their energy costs were down 22% and that he had recommended us to the CEO. That phone call is the one I think about. Not the conference room, not Craig's face. The work. Because what you build quietly, without an audience, without validation, and without anyone watching, is the truest version of what you are capable of. The recognition, when it comes, is just confirmation of something that was already real. The Wall Street Journal did not make ClearPath worth $10 million. It was already worth it. They just wrote it down. That was what they missed. That was what I tried in a different way to help Clarissa understand. Worth does not start when someone else sees it. It starts the day you decide to build something that matters, and you keep building it in the dark, on faith, until the light finally finds it. For me, this became the ultimate lesson in strategic silence. Craig and Diane looked at me and saw the plumber. Clarissa looked at me and saw a financial liability. They were so busy looking at my steel-toed boots that they never bothered to look at my brain. They treated me like a failing asset, not realizing I was the most valuable player on the board. But the real twist is this. I did not just win the argument. I changed the entire game. I did not scream my worth in that conference room. I let the Wall Street Journal do it for me. I learned that worth is not something you announce. It is something you build in the dark until it becomes too bright to ignore. So do not be mad when people underestimate you. Use their silence to your advantage. While they are busy placing you in a category, be busy building something they cannot dismiss. I did not just save my company, I saved my dignity. Because the man in the work boots was never the liability they thought he was. He was the architect of the future.